Hi, welcome to another episode of Mind Your Mind. My name is Ethel. You can also call me my psychologist, GH. I am the director of a non-profit organization that is into mental health, and that is Fafanto Psych Consult. Today we're talking about abuse, men in abusive relationships, and we also have an email from a gentleman who's been married for 5 years who has experienced such. We'll be looking at that and then also looking at abuse in general. So stick and stay. Hello and welcome to Mind Your Mind. And like I said, I have my guest. He is in the person of Mr. Edwin Boachie. He is a clinical psychologist. And today we'll be talking about men in abusive relationships. I think it's one of the things we usually don't talk about, when it comes to men and what they're going through. And for us, that is Fafanto, that's the organization. We are focusing on men in the month or in this very month. So, Mr. Boachie, thank you so much for joining us on this episode.
Thank you very much, Ethel. I hope you are doing well.
Absolutely. Hope you're also doing well too.
By God's grace, thank you.
Okay, great. So I think before we even ask or probably get to, kind of deep into all of this, I want to find out, what do you mean by abuse, or what is abuse in the first place?
Right. So, let's take it even from the perspective of example, abuse of power. So usually when we talk about abuse, we are talking about misuse. It could be misuse of your power over someone. It could be the misuse of information. It could be in any form, and the focus is on the bad effect it has on the receiver. So abuse is basically something done towards someone with the intention of giving a negative effect on the person.
Now, I think from where you started, that means we have different types of abuse. Right. So what are some of the common ones? Yeah. So what are some of the common ones, that maybe we can actually delve in today?
Right. So, talking about men and the forms of abuse, definitely we are looking at abuse in the context of relationships, in the context of, diverse relationships, family, work, and all of that. So we have various forms. We have the abuse that we use our mouth, verbal abuse. So someone can dress you down from top to down. Sometimes they can dress you again to make you look entirely different. So verbal abuse is one form of abuse. And apart from that, we have physical abuse. And of course, physical abuse is what most people are quite familiar with when we talk of abuse. So physical abuse is, of course, the use of your hand, an object, or what have you, to inflict pain or torture on another person. Now, beyond physical abuse, we have emotional abuse. So you can actually abuse someone emotionally. You may not necessarily do physical. You are not beating them. You are not inflicting physical pain on them, but you are causing them emotional torture. And that is also another form of abuse. Of course, we have sexual abuse. And there are so many areas and angles. Of late, because, we keep learning new things. And so you realize that, in fact, even we have animal abuse. If you violate the supposed rights or, the rights of animals, or you maltreat them, what you are doing is you are abusing them. So it could come from various angles. Yes.
Okay. I think that sets the tone for what I'm about to read, which is a message we had, within the week. So let me just read it out, and then afterwards, I think we'll just go into the nitty-gritties. So, hello, my psychologist, GH. I would like to remain anonymous, but I've been married to my wife the past 5 years. She's hardworking, has become very successful, but independent. I'm also successful at what I do, but I've been having regrets lately because for the past 3 years, my wife constantly belittles me, criticizes my every decision and makes fun of my dreams and aspirations. She has managed to isolate me from family and friends. I feel utterly alone and embarrassed to open up to anyone about this. We have 2 children. Now, this is a man who sent in this. And aside what he's talked about, what are some of the common indicators of abuse in a relationship?
Right. So, in fact, what you just read, it's not new. It's very, very common in our society, but oftentimes we hear it from the perspective of a woman. If this had been a report from a woman, it would resonate very, very well. Oh, that's what they do. But then the same point, men also go through such troubles and challenges. The issue here is the articulation of the challenge or the problem is where the problem comes in. To begin with, it is situated in our culture, in our society, and so even the same thing that would be done to a woman that is considered a form of abuse could be done to a man, and it's normal. And I mean, you don't even complain about it to begin with. I mean, so in public, if your colleague taps your butt, pardon me, and you're a woman and the person is a man, it's considered workplace abuse. But then when a woman does it to a man, it's like
kind of trivialize that one.
Yeah. So the element here is the fact that we trivialize, as you say, a lot of the abuses towards men.
Right. So then that would mean that, there are some societal expectations and some stereotypes about masculinity, and maybe how that can contribute to, what happens in our context. Now, I would want us to go into maybe some specific barriers that these men are facing, whether it's at the workplace, in the relationship, marriage, probably dating, whatever it is. What do you think are some of the unique barriers that, men are experiencing as a result?
Right. So to begin with, from the bigger bracket, we're talking society, right? So we are cultured in such a way that the man is supposed to man up. In fact, even our language spells it out. You have to man up. There is no statement as woman up, right? Everything that's got to do with harboring pain and moving on as if nothing has happened has got some masculine definition or some masculine touch when it comes to language. So generally, culture, society puts some strain on men. And then when beyond that, there is also the innate sense of responsibility and protection, which in itself is not bad. Okay, so the nature of a man is such that I am supposed to protect, I am supposed to fend for, I'm supposed to defend, and all of that, right? So even without an explicit form of pressure, let me put it that way,
right?
We accumulate some form of pressure upon ourselves. And I always give this example. I mean, on a regular day, say 2 national service persons going home from work who sit in trotro, the young man feels that he is supposed to pay for the young woman.
That's true, yeah.
Exactly. Now, when the young woman does it, it's almost as if, come on, what are you doing? Yeah. Let me do it. Meanwhile, they are all taking the same amount of allowance, right? So generally, innately, beyond society, there is some innate element that merge with societal expectations and societal role setting in itself. Then apart from that, our social environment, and I'm explaining this beyond society. Social environment in the sense of our friends and family and all of that. So this man staying anonymous is one of the best men could do. To stay anonymous. Yeah. I mean, if people are supposed to come out publicly, and let's say you were not protecting them or there was no anonymity to this, you will still have a lot of women talking about their issues, but men do. And that is because when a man feels that an information that he holds dearly has been used against them, they shut up. They coil inside, and they may never again vocalize their pain, vocalize their problem. So they are more innately positioned in a place of helping, thereby carrying some burden. And then mostly men are rational or logical, if I can say. So they explain a lot of their issues away. Something that they should have gotten help for, they explain it away. And that is why typically a man would quickly inform the wife to seek help, or better still, take the wife to the hospital if the wife is not well. I mean, you would even see the wife is not well, but when the man is not well, then you realize that it's gotten to the boiling point, right? So they are also not well, they don't show it, they mask it. And they are very good at that because they don't know who will hear them out and who will empathize with them. Because, in fact, even with abuse, when you go to, say, the police station to report, and I am sure these things are changing, but in times past, when a man goes to the police station to report an abuse, and the abuse is physical, and it's coming from a woman, especially his wife, he will not be taken serious. Right. But like I said, some of these things are changing and men are beginning to speak out.
Then what do you think can be done differently in terms of this, how we're actually dealing with it as a society? How can we make it easy for men then to get the support, going there and getting the help? How can we make it easy for them? Yeah.
Right. So to begin with, I think, for example, what you are doing is one of the ways to help. You are doing a very good job. You are bringing it out there. People get to know and realize, whoa, so actually there is someone I can go and speak to. So there are professionals, and the more we exhibit these professionals, the more we talk about professional help, the more people are likely to appreciate and make use of. In fact, even with that, still men are more likely to try and work their way out before they may end up seeking a therapist or something. So talking about it, public education, awareness creation, and all of that can help. Then beyond that, remember that even not even men only, generally, when before someone comes to a professional, you're a professional, so you know what I'm talking about. Before someone comes to a therapist, they would have gone to, in the olden days, we would have said, before they come to you, they would have gone to see their friend. They would have spoken about their issues out to their partners, or maybe, all of these happen before eventually coming to a therapist. Right. And so when I tell someone about my issue and the person trivializes it, it becomes a big blow, and I don't talk details. Oftentimes they will leave hints here and there, and then when the challenge of trivializing, when the challenge of even those who are trying to help in ways that are not helpful, that can also be a problem. So we have a very available social support network. Let me put it that way. A very available social support network, especially in a communal setting like Ghana. But then the social support network, unfortunately, most of them don't know how to support better. So they end up complicating issues. That means something that should have taken a man, example, 2 weeks to see a therapist may take like 4 months. And then when they sit in front of a therapist, opening up can also be a challenge. And so I think that empathy from every sphere is a very good element. And then appreciation. See, oftentimes the man doesn't want an express appreciation. So, for example, the man gives chop money, and the wife will have to bow down and thank them. And no, they don't necessarily need that.
Right.
Now, the appreciation they want is you not nagging. The appreciation they want is you not, once again, trivializing their dream. So when you pick the story you brought across, this person has a dream and thinks that I can be vulnerable enough to discuss with my wife. I mean, he may have other friends and then he chooses to do that with the wife. And then the wife believes that, maybe I've come across certain men who have higher dreams, bigger aspirations, and all of that. Now, instead of the person showing appreciation of the fact that you are discussing something important to you with me, and I appreciate that. Okay, how do you intend to do this, that, and then contributing what the person is trivializing, what the person is doing is trivializing. Okay, so basically, when we appreciate in the context of encouraging, supporting, and then helping bring out the lapses, men like it when you show interest and you also bring some example intuitive components. So, for example, you're having some intuition about this, and you feel like, Charlie, this thing there, we have to read.
Yeah.
But if you abruptly say, I don't think it will work, and then to what end? What are you going to make out of coconut business? What are you going to make out of this, that? And then what you do is you bring them down. You don't show empathy, and they feel shattered. They keep to themselves, and before long, especially in marriages and relationships, if they are lucky, the men are lucky to have other friends they may discuss these with, and then their partners will feel like they are not sharing with them.
Yeah. You're right. We're right about that. And you're just thinking about it. But then again, the other bit would be, now, this particular gentleman who is able to disclose what he's going through in terms of his experience, would you actually call this abusive? And what are some of the traits? Because he's mentioned some things, but can we break it down further so that somebody listening would say, okay, so I recognize this, and I think that this is actually what I'm going through. Because I've also realized that there are some people that actually don't have names for what they're experiencing and would only think, oh, this person talks too much, constantly saying negative things. But this man is actually going through abuse. And so what are some of the signs that will let another person listening know that, look, this is actually abuse that I am going through, whether it's verbal, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional? Some common comments, some common symptoms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you see, the interesting thing with abuse is sometimes, unfortunately, the one who is being abused may not explicitly think or see it as an abuse, but they know that there's something wrong, right? And so one of the things you can identify in a person who is going through one abuse or the other, maybe I'll center it around the scenario that you brought up, is the fact that everything they say, every reasonable thing they say is trivialized, right? Now, so I say this, it doesn't sitting well with you, and then you come later talking about something that someone has said, probably less trivial than mine, or better still, I don't see it as so much wisdom, and you are attributing this as wow. I heard that and it baffled me. The person then gets to know, oh, you appreciate other people saying it more than I do. So what happens is then once again the person withdraws.
Yeah.
So usually when a man is going through any form of abuse, they withdraw, right? Now in a situation, if I get your question, in a situation where you, the man, would know that you are being abused, will be, for example, withdrawal of, example, in marriages, sex. So they use sex as a weapon, or denying you sex as a weapon against you, right? And so that would be an example of you being in some form of abusive engagement. And then another point would be withdrawal of engagements. By engagements, the usual conversations that you used to have, you realize that now you are moving from sentences to paraphrase to single yes and no answers, no matter where the conversation leads to.
Okay.
Then comes some form of suspicions, right? Because the person abusing you need to validate what they are doing. They need they need to feel like they are not abusing you. So they put it on you. Example, have you seen that you made me do this? Right? So oftentimes we do not make people do anything, but then people don't want to take responsibility of what they are doing, and they put it on you as though you are the one making them.
Right.
When you realize that someone is also on, I mean, let me even come home and say your partner. Okay. Now, when you realize your partner is avoiding your conversation. So you try to strike a meaningful conversation about something you're not happy about. They either listen and say, okay, and that's about it. Even when it comes to, okay, so I need you to give me an answer, think about it, and let me hear from you. They will say, okay, and they will never say anything.
Yeah.
The other thing also is that they like to play victims. Now, when abusers like to play victims, when someone is abusing the partner, there is always the me that you are hurting. So when you talk and I talk back, I am hurting you. When you talk and I reserve my comments or I do not talk back, I am hurting you. Everything hurting. And then also in relationships or in marital abuses, maybe let's stay there a while. Sometimes relatives of, I mean, your in-laws.
Right.
Sometimes the in-laws also come in because then the other party has discussed your entire issue with the in-laws and taking only their sides. And so, I mean, who do you go to talk about the things your partner is doing that you're not happy about? Because already they've taken it ahead of you. So just like recently, when your story comes first on social media, it's almost as if you are the one who is the victim. So they always like to go around and discuss the issues first with people they know you have a certain respect and honor for. So that could be another form of a person going through abuse.
Okay. So that sounds a lot like a lot of power and control at play, being controlled, trying to manipulate the situation or the narrative. Things like gaslighting happening, maybe some insulting language being used. I mean, anything to gain some power and control over the other individual. And that seems to be going on, in abusive relationships. Now, I know you've talked about we have several types of abuse, but I think what you mentioned are some of the common signs for anybody that is listening. Now, for men in the healthcare setting, I wouldn't say I'm being biased, but these are observations I've made. I mean, you can have men coming in with all sorts of concerns before they actually end up in maybe the psychologist space or the counselor space. Probably done a lot of shopping, doctor shopping from one place to the other. What now this particular situation, I think that it's something we need to stress on because it's a personal observation. I don't know what your experience has been, but they come with all sorts of symptoms. And sometimes it's more physical. So the head's not sleeping well, maybe challenges focusing or concentrating, not happy, and so very, very physical compared to maybe the mental aspect. What would be your take on healthcare professionals and how we can manage or probably even help identify such? Because now, if a woman comes in and then she's wearing glasses and she takes it off and there's a mark, it is very quick for anybody to think that something has gone on, regardless of the situation she's going to. That is not the case when it comes to men. Exactly. And I know of women who are actually engaging in, they are very physical in their abuse of men. It won't click. It's not something you'd actually would think of. What would you say to the healthcare workers and how we can help identify and make men feel okay to disclose what is going on? You've talked of the empathy and all that, but from the side or from the angle of the healthcare professional, what would be your advice?
Right. So you gave a very insightful observation. All the woman needs to do is to talk in a very low tone and appear sad. And you are more likely to explore angles of abuse. But then when it comes to the man, once again, it goes back to the way we were cultured, right? However, we do not want to pass this on, and so we have to do something. Now, as healthcare practitioners or health workers, when we make sure this is exploring abuse is part of our intake assessments, irrespective of the gender of the person present, irrespective of the age of the person present,
right,
then we are more likely to capture that. Then also, it shouldn't just be a demographic. Have you been abused? Yes, no. In the past 3 months, no. It doesn't work that way. What is important is to strike a decent engagement and conversation. One, normalize the fact that the reality is there. Women are abusive just as men are abusive. Or a woman can equally be abusive. Right now, I mean, it's interesting how when people get violence, and of course, I mean, probably because men are usually stronger than women physically, everyone is afraid when it comes to a man physically abusing a woman. But then when it comes to a woman physically abusing a man, it's almost as if, this was just a feather around your ear afterwards. See? And so we don't pay much attention to it. But if we will be equally alarmed about the bruises on their face, the bruises on their arms, or what have you, we will be able to pick that one out. And so, for example, if you happen to be a doctor who does physical examination and all of that, do not overlook it, even when they say it's a scar. And that scar from the fact that they were trying to fix their car tire. Please don't overlook it. Make sure you go beyond that and say, if it's a physical, if it's a person who inflicted pain on you, I know that when it comes to men, it's difficult for men to talk about it, but we are open for that discussion. And don't don't feel intimidated. Sometimes talking about it alone helps than not talking about it at all. And then introducing the element of, we have other professionals like psychologists who can take you deeper into what you are going through and help, right? And so it is a collective thing. I don't want to give it to only health workers. It's actually a collective thing, right? Now, so when it comes to friends hanging out, when a girlfriend, when a girl meets her girlfriends and maybe her partner abused her, what you hear the other girlfriends saying is insulting the other the other person, the man, insulting him, demeaning him, for the other woman to know that, oh, she is of a higher value and this man doesn't even deserve her. But when it comes to men, it's all about Chelsea and Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester, what have you. Oh, your team lost, and that's about it. So men tend to hang out more and yet talk less about what is going on in their personal life. And so I do not want to position it only in the context of healthcare workers. However, if the healthcare workers could also pick it up and strike a conversation and go beyond their simple yes and no taking, go and buy this medication, do this, we will be able to come out with or identify a lot of cases going down the drain.
Mm-hmm. Now, I like what you just said regarding, and I think that's an interesting remark, that men talk, they meet and talk, but they don't talk so much about what's going on in their lives. And for a man who is in an abusive relationship, what can that person do? Should he leave the relationship? Is a person, that's the other person, that's their partner, is a person sick? What would you advise that person to do? I mean, let's say they're married. I mean, if they're dating, it's easier, but let's say they're married. They have children, because in this particular situation, the person is married, he's got 2 kids, and they're married for 5 years. What would you tell, or what would you advise this man?
Right. So to begin with, let me even commend him for coming out first. Okay. And commend you for being available for him to come out. Right. Now, talking about things like this are very important. What I would suggest would be for the person to speak out. Speak out. It's not a straightforward approach, because for all you know, this person has even tried to speak out to friends, but they don't immediately come out to say, oh, my wife is beating me, my wife is doing that, right? They may put it in some proverbial angles and hear the others, but you know how the masculine friend is. The comments are usually not what they want to hear, right? And so they shut up. But I would suggest that there is no, if I butcher you with a machete, chances are that you will die. The same way, if you do that to me, I'll die. So there shouldn't be any sense of masculine pride. I can handle it. I can, and then I say masculine pride in the negative connotation. But of course, there is a masculine pride that is a positive one, and I'm sure that's for another topic. But then the person must be able to seek professional help, because you see, sometimes from a professional, you would be able to see things in better perspectives regarding what best to do, right? But that does not mean he should go in, stay in, suffer. There are various modalities. If it is physical, definitely the police can come in and really I mean, that becomes quote unquote a crime. But when someone decides to give you a cold feet, silent treatment, I mean, I don't know the kind of law that will
emotional
implicate them.
aspect.
So, yes. So for the physical, they can take it to the law enforcement. Now for the emotional, do not swallow it. People are really crying in marriages. They're crying in relationships because they are suspecting their partners. And it's almost as if I don't have the evidence, but I have all the leads. And so when I talk about it, I am seen as a jealous husband, a jealous boyfriend. And when I talk about it and I overdo it, or my words go to the extent of maybe using a verbal language that's abusive, then it turns around to them playing the victims. And so they are caught up. And so it means that the way we deal with it generally, if we do not look at better perspectives, we may do it wrongly, and it will be more and more frustrating to us. So I think that in all of this, what is important is for men to be more emotionally intelligent. That is not to say women should not, but for the purposes of our discussion, a more emotionally intelligent person will have some level of self-awareness, okay? And so they know their limits, they know their emotional elasticity level, right? If you don't know it, that is when you would end up being aggressive towards the person, and it will surprise you. You didn't know you could be this angry, you didn't know you could be this aggressive. But then the principle of frustration aggression, when you are more frustrated, you are more likely to be aggressive. And so if you know your frustration limit, if you know your emotional elasticity limit, then you will be able to regulate yourself or regulate your emotions. That means if the what do we call it, if the ceiling was here, for you to be more and more to have more and more control of yourself, you push the ceiling here, so that worst case scenario, when the abuse gets here, you know that when it crosses, you may not be able to control yourself. It's a global thing, but permit me to address those of us in the zone, Ghana, Africa zone, where we are more communal, right? There are a lot of help available in their own special ways that are beneficial. And I think it is important we fall on these, right? Remember that one of the ways women use to deal better with abuse is they make use of all the other authorities available, their pastors, their imams, and all of that, right? Now, fortunately, most pastors are beginning to appreciate the professional dimensions of counseling, and they are getting more and more training. And so it's not all going to be about oh, you go and resolve it. Oh, we've finished. Everybody hug a kiss, a peg on the cheek, and we say you are back together. No.
Yeah.
Sadly, and most importantly, like I said, with the emotional intelligence angle, interestingly, no matter the form of abuse you are getting from your wife, the moment you replicate it with abuse, remember that the systems are put in place a little bit against you. Let me not even say a little bit. The system is such that it protects women and children more than it does men when it comes to abuse, right? And so no matter, even if there are only a minimal percentage of women who abuse men, if you happen to find yourself in an abusive relationship as a man, you should know that the other side of it, the odds are against you. And so at all costs, you need to restrain yourself. you need to restrain yourself. And I say this on the background of the fact that every now and then you hear in the news a boyfriend has killed a girlfriend, a boyfriend has shot this, a husband has done this to the woman, and all of that. I tell you, that is what makes the news. A lot of the men are also going through some challenges that will never make it to the news. But if you are in this domain, you need to exercise extra restraint so as to not get to the other side. Else, as we say, nobody will really pay attention to you. And that is the more reason you need to vocalize, you need to verbalize what you are going through. Talk about it. You see, there is something phenomenal about talking, right? That actually contributes to, example, religious coping mechanism, right? When people pray, sometimes it is not like right after they pray, their prayers are answered.
Yeah.
But because they vented out their emotions, because they talked, they get off their knees and feel relatively better. And so talking about it is very, very important. Men usually, unfortunately, men usually don't talk about this. So I'm saying that talking about it is very, very important. Now, for let me try and bring this home better. If you're a man and as a child you suffered, say, a sexual abuse, I mean, oftentimes it's almost as if when we talk sexual abuse, we are talking women and children. By children, girls. But we have boys who suffered sexual abuses from their house helps, from their aunties, what have you. Now, if you are in this domain and you kept it to yourself, as compared to if you have been able to talk about it, you will see that the difference is clear. Those who have been able to talk about this have been able to deal with the trauma associated with it way, way better than those who have not talked about it. And there is this complicating effect of previous abuses having their way of coming through to help, and by help, not in the positive, but to help the present abuse to even foster it the more. So it means that the trauma associated, when not dealt with well, accumulates, and any form of extra abuse you experience as an adult, it is possible that it will join and then escalate the present trauma you will experience from the abuse you go through.
Yeah. Right. So I think that this has been a rather enriching conversation regarding abuse. I think some other time we'd have to actually go into, or probably take them one after the other, the types of abuse, maybe them some common signs and symptoms for each one. But thank you so much. That's Mr. Edwin Boachie Yiadom for joining us. I believe that any man who's heard today will definitely benefit from, especially those who are actually going through some form of abuse themselves and putting a name to that experience. And I think that's also very important because at times, like you said, we tend to trivialize experiences that men go through. But we must remember first and foremost that we are all human. That's the first thing. And not the gender so much. We all do have unique challenges we might experience, but there are certain ones, there are other ones that are common to all of us. And when you're going through that, it's okay to get help. And if it's getting help, get it also from the right person. So thank you so much, for opening our eyes and for your time as well. And I'm hoping, that moving forward, we'll probably get some other people sending in messages and, mentioning where they got the help from. But if there's anybody that also needs help, definitely you can. One of the things I would say is, getting to all the regional hospitals. There are professionals there, psychologists, all sorts. They are there, they're available. And so if you're not sure where to go, definitely do. And you can still reach out. So you can see the numbers that are also down below. You can also get in touch and we'll point you in the right direction depending on where you are, to a place or a facility that is closer to you. So thank you so much. And until the next, we say thank you and bye-bye.